Okay, let's jump into these last 3 rules for fair fighting. Rule number 8. Some couple conflict can be traced to unprocessed grief or loss. This is why it's so important to do an inventory of the various conflicts in your life and then label them. Someone once said, wisdom is history without the emotional charge. These emotional charges are likely connected to loss, so you'd be wise to identify and label the losses in your past that still carry with them emotional charges. Job loss, loved ones, relationship, career, dreams, self-confidence, health, youth, your home. Label the losses and then assign emotional charges that you're still experiencing. Sadness, betrayal, fear, overwhelmed, hurt, numbness, confusion, pain. In doing this exercise, you better understand more about your own conflict rather than by default assigning blame to your spouse. I can tell you as a marriage therapist, I see individuals blaming their spouse for their own interpersonal conflicts without the awareness that their losses are perhaps the real and greatest source of emotional charges in their life. Again, it may take the help of a professional to sort through these losses, but it is only fair to your spouse for you to be aware of any unprocessed losses in your past so that you can assign them accordingly. So take the time to label the loss, label the emotional charges, and then have conversations with your spouse about what you've discovered. Rule number 9 when it comes to fair conflict. Healthy relationships save conflict for a time when they are ready to work together. Remember, there are varying degrees of conflict, so let's define a few things. A disagreement is when 2 people see the same thing a little bit different. A conversation is a tool that couples use to discuss areas of disagreement where there are 2 people sharing and 2 people actively listening. A dispute is when 2 people allow a disagreement to become emotionally charged. A debate is when 2 people representing 2 different perspectives actively try to convince the other they are wrong, yielding one winner and one loser. Conflict, however, is when 2 people address an issue without the emotional charge as a team in order to strike out against the problem. So then a conflict becomes a dispute if 2 people are seeing each other as the problem instead of the problem as the actual problem. You see, too much conflict leads to a lack of trust, drains the relationship. Even if you're trying to work together, conflict is hard work and it should only be reserved for big deals. Remember this, if everything is a big deal, nothing's a big deal. So be sure to save conflict for a time when you are both ready to actually work together as a team against the problem. All right, here's what you've been waiting for. Rule number 10. True conflict requires multiple conversations, so end each one well. If you're truly experiencing conflict, I'm not talking about a debate or dispute, you want to give credit to your spouse for the time, the effort, especially any forward motion. Being mindful of validation where your spouse validated your feelings or your experiences. Give credit if your spouse really made an effort to understand, especially if they didn't agree. Reserve the right to agree to disagree if you're unable to resolve the issue. And if your issue is related to values or morals or a difference in worldview, you may need an outside perspective. But don't approach true conflict with a one-and-done conversational expectation. The way to end is to set a new time to discuss the issue again so it doesn't fall off your radar. You give each other appropriate credit, even if it's only to acknowledge that your spouse took the time to listen and to try and understand. Don't be discouraged that the results don't come easy, because conflict is a process and it has to be approached carefully and consistently. All right, let's kind of wrap all this up together. Listen, our culture has totally messed up this word conflict for us. It's become like a 4-letter word to be avoided, or the image of the aftermath of a train wreck. That's not fair. Let's get an accurate image in our head of 2 people sitting down at a coffee shop, carefully and calmly listening to the valuable input that each one has to offer. Conflict is necessary for healthy couples, but it is not healthy if conflict often leads to a dispute. I hope this information has been helpful to you and that you were able to take really good notes. I especially hope that you and your spouse have some conversational tools now to use in your next conflict. Listen, the fastest way to be heard is to listen. And the quickest way through a conflict is to take as much time as it needs. I wish you well. If we at Tricord here can be of any help to you, please email us and let us know your questions. We'll get back to you. We would love to help you connect with the right resources so that your relationship is getting what it needs. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your relationship and listening to the information provided here. I want to encourage you to use this as soon as possible and take a different perspective on what conflict really is and how valuable it can be in building a stronger marriage.